Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for the biggest round of class changes so far. We've got brand new patch notes right off the printing press coming in at 8:41 p.m. Lots of changes incoming. We'll scroll through them really quick. There's some very surprising changes in here. And I do think that these changes could be not potentially meta changing, they will be meta changing. Some classes are getting big nerfs, some classes are getting big buffs. Without further ado, let's get into the details. Sorry, it's been a long day, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. As we've now completed 3 weeks of War Within Season 1, we have enough data and feedback on class performance to allow us to do a broad pass on outliers in dungeons, raids, and PvP. With scheduled weekly maintenance in each region, we'll be making the following adjustments, okay? So, Blood Death Knight, getting some changes. Some stuff's going on. Sand Lane damaging... Sand Lane, Vampiric blood damage is being increased. Infliction of Sorrow deals more damage. Infliction of Sorrow deals 130% of remaining disease damage. Was 100. So basically, Sand Lane for blood got buffed. Havoc Demon Hunter, Aldraki Reaver. Wounded Quarry damage got increased by 100%. Aldraki Reaver, Ward Blades Hunger damage increased by 100%. And Aldraki Reaver, Reaver's Glaive damage increased by 15%. I don't know what these changes are. Like, I don't know what this means. Could be big, could not be big. I don't think a lot of people actually play the Aldraki Reaver right now, so I don't know if this is going to make it viable or not. Vengeance Demon Hunter got some changes. That's a tank specialization. Not really too concerned about that. Druid Feral Windstalker, chance for Bloodseeker Vines to grow on a single target is unchanged, but slightly increased when Rip and Rake are on multiple targets. Windstalker burst growth damage increased by 10%. Don't think those are too relevant. Restoration Druids, all healing increased by 5%. Does not affect PvP combat. Now, I've seen a lot of Resto Druids upset about this. I've seen a lot of Resto Druids upset about this fact. Like, Resto Druids aren't too hot right now, but it seems like the devs really don't want to give Resto Druids just a ton of throughput. Like, I think they feel like, this is my guess, but it seems to me like they feel like Restoration Druid is fine. It's something else that is keeping them down. However, Cenarian Ward got a 40% increase, so that's pretty good. It's good single target healing. Cenarian Ward getting buffed will help a little bit. And keep in mind, these are general changes, guys. These are not PvP specific changes so far. Augmentation Evoker. Blistering Scales grants allies 20% of your armor, was 30, so Blistering Scales a little bit worse for Aug. Devastation, Flame Shaper consume flame damage increased, and Flame Shaper engulf damage reduced by 20% in PvP combat. That's very interesting, because this should be like a PvP specific change, but it's not. I didn't even read that one. So this one is reduced. So they nerf this in PvP, and then they buff this overall. Preservation Evoker, Flame Shaper, engulf healing increased by 20%. Consume Flame healing reduced by 50%, but not in PvP combat. Okay. I don't know what's going on. What's up, guys? We're just going over the patch notes. Let's take a look at Beast Mastery Hunter changes. Basilisk Collar damage bonus per damage over time effect reduced to 2%, 4%, was 510. So, okay, and then they buff kill command damage and they buff pet damage. Now, a lot of people are freaking out about this, but I've got intel that this is actually a single target damage nerf in PvE. So, like, apparently this nerf is less significant or is more significant than these buffs, allegedly. You guys can fact check me on that, but that's the word on the street. At first glance, it's like, oh my god, BM's getting huge buffs, but allegedly this is more impactful in a negative way than these are in a positive way. Allegedly. Survival Hunter, 2 and 4 set going to be changed. It looks like their 2 set got buffed, and their 4 set got buffed for Survival Hunter. Mage Hero Talents. Frostfire Bolt damage increased by 15%. Frostfire Infusion damage increased by 50%. Frostfire Empowerment damage bonus increased to 60%. Frostfire Frost Mastery now grants 2% mastery, was 1. Okay. I'll tell you this. I don't think for Frost or Fire Mage, any of these changes are necessary or should happen, but I guess mages are just going to be getting some buffs here. Like, these are completely unnecessary in PvP. Maybe in PvE they're relevant and needed. Okay, Monk's hero talent, Master of Harmony, stored vitality causes an additional 40% healing and damage, was 25. Okay, so they buffed Master of Harmony. Overall, they buffed it, I think, for Brewmaster. Mistweaver Monk, Master of Harmony, Coalescence now causes Aspect of Harmony to increase damage and healing taken by 30%. Aspect of Harmony now stores 30% of healing. So Aspect of Harmony, this is the one or Master of Harmony is the one that I already liked playing. It was my preference and it got buffed, which is great. Yeah, so Frostfire is really bad in PvE. So there you go. It pays to suck in PvE. Windwalker, Conduit of Celestials. Celestial Conduit now scales its damage with Mastery Combo Strike, so I think that's a big buff. Holy Paladin, all healing reduced by 5%. Does not affect PvP combat. However, Lightsmith Awakening now causes Blessing of the Forge to spawn a sacred weapon when extending the duration of Avenging Wrath. Lightsmith, Hammer, and Anvil's healing effect radius increased to 20 yards, was 5. Anvil and Hammer's healing increased by 150%. Divine Guidance increased by 50%. So I bet Borngood is really stoked about these as he already plays the Lightsmith. So that might make it a little bit more competitive. Probably got buff for Prot too, don't care. Templar, Shake the Heavens, lasts for 10 seconds. Templar Sanctification duration increased to 12 seconds, was 10. Templar Final Reckoning now increases the damage of Hammer of Light by 30%, was 15. Templar Hammer of Light main target damage increased by 25%. Hammer of Light secondary target damage increased by 75%. Templar Light's Deliverance now increased at 50%, was 60. Templar Undisputed Ruling grants 15% haste, was 12. So these are big Templar buffs, right? Am I wrong? Like, these seem like pretty big buffs. Wrathful Descent now deals 125% of Empyrean Hammer damage to nearby enemies, was 100. So these are really, really strong buffs for Ret Paladins, allegedly. Templar was terrible, now it's going to get buffed. This is a big one for me, guys. These changes right here are, when I read these, my jaw almost hit the floor. And now I know Shadow Priests have some problem, but their problems aren't that their damage doesn't, like, Shadow Priests already do Affliction Warlock level damage. So let's take a look with that in mind. Mind Blast damage increased by 10%. Shadow War Death damage increased by 10%. Void Bolt damage increased by 10%. Shadowy Apparition damage increased by 10%. Void Weaver Entropic Rift damage increased by 10%. Void Weaver Void Blast damage increased by 20%. Void Weaver Collapsing Void damage increased by 10%. Void Weaver Void Flay damage increased by 10%. Void Weaver Inner Quietus now increases Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain damage by 25%, was 20. So these are very significant buffs. I'll tell you that right now. We take a look at Rogues. Deathstalkers, Follow the Blood effect now requires 2 targets afflicted by Rupture, was 3. Okay. Assassination, Caustic Splatter, Poison damage dealt reduced to 40%, was 45. The 2-set chance to trigger has been increased. The 2-set Vile Tinctures, Poison damage buff now correctly affects Envenom, Kingsblade, and appropriate hero talents. Okay, then I think they nerfed the 4-set. We're expecting these changes to result in a net increase in overall damage, heavily weighted towards single target. So I guess these are single target buffs for Assassination Rogue. Outlaw, all damage increased by 4%. Dispatch damage increased by 6%. Precise Cuts bonus Precise Cuts bonus to Blade Flurry damage per missing target increased to 4%. So these could be big. I mean, we already saw Nixie in the tournament play Outlaw, and it didn't look bad. Yeah, it didn't look bad at all. So this is pretty big. Subtlety, Black Powder damage increased by 35%. I think that's pretty irrelevant. Okay, let's keep going. We're almost at the PvP changes. Restoration, Earthen Harmony now causes Earth Shield to reduce damage taken by 3%, was 5, does not affect PvP combat. So that was unchanged. Acidic Rain damage reduced, don't care. Here we go, Demo, Pact of the Eredrune Doomguard deals 20% increased damage. Grimoire Felguard now increases the damage of Summoned Felguard by 60%. Felguard damage increased by 10%, and Gloomhound's Gloom Slash increased by 20%. So these are not the biggest changes, but just wait. If you're a Demo Warlock fan, as I know most of you are, I know most of the people in my comments right now, if you guys are watching on YouTube, you guys are watching on Twitch, I know a lot of you guys love Demonology Warlocks. You're really excited that Demonology Warlocks could finally be back, so just wait and see what happens. Warrior. All right, so Warriors are getting some much-needed love as well. Arterial bleed causes Colossus Might to increase the damage dealt by deep wounds and rend by 3% per stack, was 2, so that got buffed. No Stranger to Pain increases total damage ignored by Ignore Pain by 20%, was 15, so Colossus got another buff. Mountain Thane Lightning Strike damage increased, buff to Mountain Thane. Now in PvP, a lot of people don't play Mountain Thane, but yeah. Mountain Thane, Ground Current damage increased by 25%. Mountain Thane Thorns Might causes lightning strikes to generate 3 rage, was 5. Mountain Thane Thorns Might increases revenge, raging blow and execute damage by 25%. Slayer, Calling Cyclone, bonus damage reduced to 10%. So they nerfed Calling Cyclone, bonus to Bladestorm. Opportunities now increases the damage and critical strike damage of your next overpower raging blow by 20%, was 30%. So I think Colossus Arms comes out ahead and Colossus Slayer is just worse. For Fury, the 2-set bonus does not affect PvP, nobody cares. Does not affect PvP, nobody cares. Mountain Thane Crashing Thunder causes Thunderous Clap to generate 8 rage, was 5. Mountain Thane, Strength of the Mountain increases Bloodthirst and Rampage damage by 30%. So Mountain Thane may be back for Fury. It seems like they're putting some big buffs on Mountain Thane, so that could be interesting. Now we get into the meat and potatoes, guys. We get into the meat and potatoes, all right? Here are the PvP changes. So far, up to the PvP changes, I'd say Colossus Arms Warrior, Demonology Warlock, Outlaw Rogue, Shadow Priest, Rep Paladins, a little bit of mage stuff. And those are probably the biggest changes, most significant. So let's look at the PvP changes and where the developers feel like we should be going. So the first target being hit is Unholy. Death Knight damage reduced by 15%. Virulent Plague damage reduced by 15%. Frost Fever damage reduced by 15%. And Blood Plague damage reduced by 15%. What are my thoughts on this? Personally, I feel like this is unnecessary. At a high level, I do not think that DKs need these nerfs. That's what I think. I think these are nerfs that are specifically targeted to like average, below average players where DKs kind of just run in and their diseases kill everything. At the higher level, I don't think that these are necessary nerfs, and this is definitely unfortunate for Unholy Death Knights. Havoc Demon Hunter, all ability damage increased by 4%. Immolation Aura damage increased by 13%. So more damage buffs here for Havoc Demon Hunter. Is that enough to make them viable? I don't know. Feral Druids, what's going to happen with them? Ferocious Wound, PvP talent. Now, decreases maximum health by 3%, was 5%. I don't think this matters that much. What do you guys think? Is that enough? Feral Druids are still going to be very good. I think this is like a little slap on the wrist. A little slap on the wrist. I don't think it matters at all. Restoration Tranquility Healing increased by 30%. So Rusted Druids are getting a Cenarian Ward buff and Tranquility Healing buff. And this one is actually the most important, in my opinion, is their mana regeneration is better. So they have better mana regeneration in PvP, which in my opinion was their main problem, is just going So that might make Rusto better. I mean, yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but I don't know if that's going to make it super competitive, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Hunter, Survival of the Fittest now provides 25% damage reduction, was 30, so a little bit of a hit. Survival Tactics now has a 2-second duration, was 3. So they nerfed the Feign Death from 3 seconds to 2 seconds, and they nerfed the Wall. Personally, I did think Hunters were a little tanky. Maybe there's some mage bias in me, but I did think Hunters, they went from having 1 wall and 1 heal, and Feign Death, of course, which was strong, to 2 walls that also heal you. So you have a wall that heals you, a second wall that heals you, and then you have 2 charges of heal that also wall you. So they had a lot of defense. Like, a lot of defense was added, so I think these changes make sense to me. Hero Talon's Dark Ranger Smokescreen now applies Survival of the Fittest at 50% effectiveness in PvP. Sentinel, Don't Look Back, effectiveness reduced by 50% in PvP. Mage. All right, guys, here are some big mage changes. Frigid Winds is now 50% effective in PvP. You might be wondering what that is. Frigid Winds is a general mage talent where you get for 2 points, you get 10% addition to your snares. So normally your snares are 50. And with 2 additional points, it goes up to 60. That's nerfed in half. So now every point you put in this is only at 2.5%, and I don't know if it's going to be worth getting. I think Frigid Winds is already relatively expensive, so I think they're just trying to tone down some of the slows. I just don't think anyone's going to play Frigid Winds, whatever. And I don't think Mage Snares are the problem. I think the Frostbites and stuff are worse. So I think that's not a huge deal, but Arcane Missile damage increased by 35% in PvP combat. Keep in mind, Arcane Mage just got buffs. Arcane Orb damage increased as well. So a little bit more missile damage, a little bit more Arcane Orb damage. Yeah. But Cubsy's coming in hot. Yeah, I know you guys might think I'm cooked for this, but I know Cubsy actually won the last cup as Arcane, but I swear, like my gut feeling is that honestly, if he was a fire mage, even when fire was bad, it would probably have been easier. Like, I swear I still don't think Arcane is insane. Even though Cubsy won with it, and we'll have to see what happens in cup number 2, but Arcane is one of those specs that is pretty much an underperformer in every aspect of the game. So it makes sense that they're getting some love. This is definitely big though. If you guys like Fire Mage, these are significant changes. These are some of the biggest buffs I think we've seen to a spec. So Pyroblast damage increased by 20%. Pyroblast damage increased by 20%. Pyroblast hits for an average of like 350, 370,000, something like that. So 20% buff is significant. It's not through the moon, but it's going to make Pyro hit a good amount higher. Fireball damage got increased. So they buff Fireball damage in PvP. Now keep in mind that is going to be specifically for Sun Fury because you don't use it as Frostfire, which is the main spec. So you're going to have to actually cast Fireball, which is interesting. Scorch damage increased by 300%, was 200%. Now, in my opinion, this is the most significant change. Like the Pyroblast change and Scorch. Heat Shimmer Scorches already hit for like 900k or something like that. So if you guys don't know what Heat Shimmer is, it's basically your Ignite has a chance to give you an instant Scorch that does 300% bonus damage. So, and that 300% bonus damage is calculated after this. So the base damage is going to increase that much, and then the Heat Shimmer is going to be crazy. So, but yeah, it's not, we'll finish the change and I'll talk about it. Ignite damage got increased by 15%. World in Flames now increases Flame Strike damage by 50%. So they nerfed World in Flames again. They really just want to kill the Flame Strike build, which personally I'm okay with. I don't like it. So whatever. And then Glass Cannon has been shot in the face. They murdered Glass Cannon. Like, I genuinely believe that they should have just said Glass Cannon is deleted because they just murdered it. Like, stop, it's dead. So they did 2 big nerfs. The first one is it decreases your health by 30% now. It was already 15%. Now it's 30% health decrease. You're never, ever going to pick it. And they nerfed the damage increase as well. So it only increases your Scorch, Fireball, and Ignite by 20% instead of 30. So there might be some world where you play this if you're like completely immune, but I really think it's unlikely that people play Glass Cannon. But maybe. It's possible. Fire is definitely going to get some big changes though, and my personal thought is that we're going to see a lot of Fire Mages in the AWC. I think I guess I'll comment more. Let's just keep reading and then I'll comment more about what I think. But yeah, these are huge changes to Fire. Shaman Healing Stream Totem increased by 15%. So they buffed Healing Stream for all Shaman specs. Lightning Bolt got increased for LE. Chain Lightning got increased for LE. Tempest Damage got increased for LE. Healing Wave got increased. Healing Surge. So the casted heals for Wrestler Shaman got buffed and Healing Stream. Warlock changes. The effectiveness of Demon Skin armor bonus is no longer reduced by 50% in PvP combat. Okay. Demonic Resilience now reduces the damage taken by your primary pet by an additional 67% in PvP combat. That's big. So your pet takes like, what is that? Your pet takes no dam. The effectiveness of Demon Skin's armor bonus is no longer reduced by 50%. Okay, so you get more armor as a Warlock. They buff Warlock's tankiness. And this, I don't know how I feel about this. Affliction Warlock was doing insane damage, but it was kind of squishy. So I guess they buffed its durability, but nerfed its damage, which I think kind of makes it more boring. Like, I don't know. Affliction was crazy, but I kind of wish Affliction was a little bit left alone. But I guess they don't agree. Because the AF nerfs are big. Malevolent Visionary reduced by 30%. That is a giga nerf. Shadow Bolt Volley reduced by 25%. Giga nerf. Soul Harvester Wicked Reaping damage reduced by 20%. Big nerf. Soul Anthema damage reduced by 20%. Big nerf. Demonic Soul damage reduced by 20%. Big nerf. So, yeah. And then, while they nerfed Affliction, they also did more buffs to Demo. So, Affliction Warlock stonks. Demo Warlock stonks. Demo is on the up and up, guys. I don't think, like, these are... I think we're going to see Demonology, Warlock, Wizard Cleaves return. Call me crazy. I think we're going to see Demo, Warlock, Wizard Cleaves back. I really do. And then Warrior. Here are the final big changes. Defensive stance now reduces damage taken by 15% in PvP combat, was 10. So a 50% buff to defensive stance, going from 10% to 15%. 15%. So Warrior's going to be a lot more durable when they want to. And then for Arms Warrior, we execute damage increased by 15%. Execute damage got increased by 15%. Mortal Strike damage increased by 55%, was 35. So big execute buffs, big Mortal Strike buffs, big D-stance buffs, big overall Colossus buffs, and then they did another buff to Master and Commander. So Master and Commander reduces the cooldown of Rallying Cry by 120 seconds and increases its effect by 10%. Was 15%. So you're going to be able to use your Rallying Cry way more often. So I think it's a 1 minute Rallying Cry. It's not as big, but it's still, I think, could be effective. And then, of course, for protection, execute damage was increased as well. Had to get some prop buffs in there, you know, very important. But yeah, Master and Commander. Crazy. Crazy, guys. So, in my opinion, the biggest winners, Demo Locks, Shadow Priest, Arms Warriors, Fire Mages. I guess Havoc Demon Hunter a little bit. Biggest losers for sure, Unholy Death Knight, Affliction Warlock. Was kind of shot in the face. Oh, and Rets got buffed too. Rets got buffed also. So maybe like Ret Demo's back, dude. Fire Mage is #1 winner with these buffs. I think Fire Mage buffs are really good, but I would not sleep on these Shadow Priest buffs. Like Shadow Priest buffs are big. Demo Warlock buffs are big. Ret Pally buffs are big, I think. But yeah, I do think that we might be in like a Fire Mage, Arms Warrior, Paladin meta, but huge changes. These patch notes are kingmakers. They just decide who's good, who's bad. Everyone, I guess, takes their turn, but definitely F's in the chat for Affliction Warlocks and Death Knights. Now, I think it's going to be important that I log on my Death Knight. Before these changes hit, I need to try to get my Elite set on my Death Knight, so let's get that rolling.